Hello viewers, thank you for joining me on my channel. In this video, I will share a story time with you about a time when I was bamboozled by a man of the church. Before I do so, I need to let you know that I'm using a camera phone, so I have a short time limit. I would need to make this particular story time in 3 to 4 parts because of the time limit I have on this camera phone I'm using. So please watch part 2, part 3, and possibly 4. I think you would find my story time interesting. At least I hope you find some interest in it. I have a very positive message I want to give you and actually will give you towards the end of my story time. When I was around 27 years old, I moved to Atlanta, Georgia. The reason why I decided to move to Atlanta, Georgia is because during that time, viewers, I was very depressed and had a very low self-esteem. So I felt that I wanted to start my life again. We know that a person can't literally start his or her life again. However, I felt I could do so by, getting a better job, going to a place where I felt I could be successful because I heard Atlanta, Georgia had a lot of things that a person can be successful at. And I just felt that I needed to leave where I was originally born. Once I got to Atlanta, Georgia, I felt afraid immediately. In fact, as I stood in the midst of the Greyhound bus station, I began to feel like, or I began to ask myself, what have you done? However, because I had acted so rashly by leaving where I was originally born with very little money, I couldn't turn back. So I stayed in Atlanta, Georgia. Soon after, I met a wonderful lady. And let me say, before I tell you more about that, I didn't have any friends or family when I moved to Atlanta, Georgia. Now, I could imagine many of you are probably thinking to yourself, why did I go to Atlanta, Georgia with very little money and having no friends or family? But again, I was very depressed. And sometimes, viewers, when people are very depressed and feel as if they have no direction, they tend to do things rashly and unreasonably. Back to the lady. I met a wonderful lady and she allowed me to come live with her. I was very happy about that and I appreciated her, but we didn't get along, viewers. And when I say we didn't get along, I mean we didn't get along at all. Therefore, I became angry at her and left her apartment. After I left her apartment, I became homeless. However, fortunately, I found somewhere to live soon after, and you may be wondering why I left her apartment when I knew I didn't have a place to live. Again, I was very depressed, so I acted rashly and also unreasonably. I found a wonderful place to live at a biblical residential center. This particular biblical residential center was in the style of a shelter, but it was a wonderful place to live. I actually prospered. It wasn't like a cult as people often think. It was a place where a person could prosper and really become grounded in Christ again. And there were no heavy rules and regulations on a person, such as a person feels as if he or she is under some type of control. I chose to go to this biblical residential center instead of a common shelter because I wanted to be grounded in Christ once again because I wasn't walking in the ordinance of Christ, viewers. So I felt that the reason why I was having the depression and problems I had during that time was because I wasn't obedient to Christ. Soon after I arrived at the biblical center, in other words, I gained residency at the biblical center, I met a wonderful man who also was a member of this biblical center or who lived at this biblical center. He was an absolute gentleman, Beers. He was 12 years older than I, conservative, but nicely dressed and very sophisticated. He took me to movies because we became dating partners. Now, we only became dating partners, if you know what I mean, and I can say that honestly. But anyway, he took me to movies. He bought me flowers, candies, and roses, and when we left the movies, he kissed me on my cheek and actually brought me back to where I live. He was an absolute gentleman. Maybe 2 months after we began dating, he asked me to marry him. I agreed and said yes quickly. I was very happy about that. Soon after we became engaged, one of the heads or clergies of the church asked him, did he want to go to another location of this particular residential center to become a pastor? He was happy about that, but also sad because he had to leave me, and I felt the same. But we felt that it would be best for him to go so he could serve people on a larger scale and become better established with Jesus Christ and Jehovah God. In saying that, I need to end this video. I was able to give you the introduction to the story time before my camera phone shuts off. I think it will soon. So please watch part 2 when I will continue my story time. Thank you for listening. Have a good one.